I never thought my life could change in a single night. A night when everything I thought I knew about family, about trust, was shattered beyond repair. I had always felt safe in the comfort of my home, surrounded by the people I loved most, especially my two brothers. But that night, everything I believed in crumbled. What happened that night still haunts me. It's not something I can easily forget, no matter how much I wish I could. I didn't see it coming. I didn't even know it was possible. But sometimes, the most unexpected moments, those moments you think you have all figured out, are the ones that change everything. I never imagined I'd be alone in a room with my two brothers. And I never thought that in that moment, my entire life would unravel. This is my story. The truth of what happened that night. It all began on a weekend when our parents were out of town. They had gone on a honeymoon vacation, leaving just the three of us at home: Ethan, Dylan, and me. We weren't kids anymore, we were adults, but we still acted like we were. There was no pressure, no one to worry about. It felt like a perfect opportunity for us to just relax, have some fun, and enjoy each other's company without anyone around to judge. We decided to open a few bottles of wine and maybe try something stronger. It was supposed to be a casual thing, just enjoying the night together. But we didn't stop after a drink or two. We kept going, maybe more than we should have. The more we drank, the lighter the mood got, and before long, we were laughing louder, teasing each other, and sharing stories like we used to when we were younger. But somewhere between the tipsy giggles and the empty bottles, something changed. It was supposed to be a fun, relaxing time, nothing more. But when the alcohol started to take its effect, so did the tension in the air. But as the night wore on, things started to feel different. I couldn't explain it, but there was this growing tension in the air. At first, it was subtle. Just a slight shift in the way we interacted. The laughter, which had come so easily earlier, felt forced now, like we were all trying to keep things light when something was slowly making the atmosphere heavier. The alcohol, which had made us carefree at first, seemed to be having a different effect on each of us. My thoughts were clouded, my head spinning, but there was something in the way they looked at me, something in the way I felt around them, that made me uneasy. I tried to ignore it, but then Ethan leaned in. I froze. My breath caught in my throat as I watched his face move closer to mine, the space between us narrowing. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel my body tense, but I didn't pull away. It was like I couldn't. And then, without warning, his lips were on mine. It wasn't just a friendly kiss, like you'd give a sibling. No, this was different. It was deep, insistent, and full of something I couldn't name. His hands were on my shoulders, pulling me closer, and I could feel the weight of his body as he pressed into me. I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing. Was this really happening? My body, however, was reacting in ways I couldn't control, and that terrified me even more. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't just fear, there was something else there, something that made me feel guilty, confused, and ashamed all at once. It was wrong, I knew it was wrong, but at that moment, I couldn't think straight. The taste of alcohol on his lips mixed with something darker, something dangerous. I wanted to pull away, to stop it, but my body wasn't listening. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it ended. I broke away from him, gasping for air, my pulse still racing. I couldn't even look at him. My mind was a blur of confusion and guilt, but more than that, I felt unsettled. Something had changed in that kiss. Something had shifted in the air between us, and I couldn't tell if it was just the alcohol, or if it was something deeper. Something far more complicated. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Ethan, my brother. How could he do that? How could I let it happen? My mind was racing, but it wasn't making any sense. That kiss, it was wrong. Everything about it screamed that it was wrong. But there I was, still standing there, unable to process what had just transpired. My body was still trembling, but the confusion inside me was even worse, but it didn't stop there. No. Dylan stepped forward next. He didn't hesitate. Without saying a word, he kissed me too. I was frozen in place. I couldn't move, couldn't think. It was like time had stopped, like I was stuck in some nightmare I couldn't escape from. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream, to push them both away, but my body wasn't responding. I just stood there, completely still, paralyzed by everything that was happening. It didn't end there. They didn't just kiss me, they took control of the situation. I felt their hands move over my body, the heat of their touch making me freeze, unable to process what was happening. The next thing I knew, Ethan was unbuttoning my shirt, his fingers trembling slightly as he worked his way down. His touch felt so different from what I was used to, so intense, and yet I couldn't move, couldn't tell him to stop. My heart raced as I felt the fabric fall to the floor, and my mind screamed for me to stop this, to push him away. But then Dylan was there, his body so close to mine. His shirt was gone in an instant, and I could feel the warmth of his chest against my skin. Every part of me was on fire, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't pulling away. The confusion was overwhelming, but there was something about the way they were touching me, the way they were making me feel that I couldn't stop. It felt wrong, I knew that, but there was a part of me, deep inside, that wanted more, that craved more of this closeness, this heat. Their lips were everywhere on my neck, on my chest, on my lips. And the more they touched me, the more I couldn't think straight. It was like a storm inside me, one that I couldn't control. I should have screamed, should have shouted for them to stop, but instead, I felt my body betray me. Every touch, every kiss sent shivers down my spine, and no matter how much I tried to fight it, I couldn't deny the way I felt. I wanted more. I needed more. I hated myself for it. The shame, the guilt, every part of me knew this was wrong. But in that moment, the confusion was too much. I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to push them away. Even though everything inside me was telling me this was a mistake, this was a line I shouldn't cross, I wanted to stay. I wanted it to last. My heart and mind were at war, and the only thing I could feel was them, their bodies pressed against mine, the heat of their hands, and the way they kissed me, like they couldn't get enough. I didn't know what was happening to me. All I knew was that I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. The part of me that knew this was wrong was drowning in the part of me that wanted to feel more, to feel wanted. And that scared me. Because the more it happened, the more I realized I was losing control, losing myself in something that would change everything. I hated myself for wanting it, but I couldn't help it. It felt too good to stop. After what happened between the three of us that night, the alcohol, the intimacy, everything, I honestly didn't know how we all managed to sleep after that. How could we? How could I? But somehow, when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I felt was a dull headache, pounding in my temples. The kind of headache that comes after too much drinking, too much confusion. It was like everything from the night before had been buried beneath the haze of alcohol, but when I tried to open my eyes, the memories came flooding back, one after another. The moment I opened my eyes, I could feel the weight of it all crashing down on me. My head throbbed, yes, but it wasn't just the headache that hurt the most. It was the memories, so vivid and so raw. The way my body had reacted, the way I had let it happen. It felt like everything I had known was slipping away, like there was no going back. My body had betrayed me, and now I had to face the consequences. I tried to sit up, to make sense of the mess in my head, but it was hard. Everything felt so wrong. The images, the sensations, they wouldn't leave me. And then, I looked over at my brothers. They were lying there, both awake, both still. The same confusion, the same guilt, the same emotions were written all over their faces. It was like I could see it in their eyes, the same shame, the same horror. It wasn't just me. They were feeling it too. The weight of what we had done, the knowledge that we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The guilt was unbearable. And yet, there was still this lingering silence between us, like none of us knew how to address what had happened, how to apologize for it or even understand it. How could we? How could I? How could any of us undo what had been done? The truth was, we couldn't. It was there, hanging over us like a shadow we could never escape. They apologized, saying it was an accident. They claimed they never meant for it to happen and promised it would never happen again. They begged me to forget it, to pretend nothing had happened, to go back to the way things were. Sitting across from them at the breakfast table, I could see the guilt in their eyes. They thought if we just agreed to move on, everything would be okay. But how could I forget? How could I pretend it was all just a mistake? I nodded, trying to hold back tears. I wanted to believe them, to believe things could go back to normal. But deep down, I knew it was impossible. What had happened between us couldn't be erased, no matter how hard we tried. What was more painful and frustrating was that I enjoyed every moment. My body betrayed me, and I couldn't control myself. I hated myself for it, but in that moment, I didn't stop. I couldn't. I wanted to move on, but the truth was, I couldn't. It wasn't that simple. It wasn't possible to just act like everything was fine. I tried. I really did. I tried to act normal around them, to pretend that night never happened. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Something was broken, something that couldn't be fixed. I entered different relationships, hoping they would help me forget, hoping they could fill the emptiness that I couldn't shake. But no matter how hard I tried, the memories wouldn't leave me. Every time I closed my eyes, every time I was alone, they came rushing back. How could I forget how my body betrayed me? How it felt every moment, even though I knew it was wrong. Every time I was in a relationship and tried to be intimate with my partner, I couldn't shake the memories. I'd remember how their hands moved through my body, how I couldn't resist their touch, their kisses, and the heat of the moment. It was like my body remembered it all, even though my mind screamed for me to stop. I'd kiss my new boyfriend, but my mind would drift back to that night, to the way I felt, to the way everything changed. The more I tried to escape those memories, the more they seemed to haunt me. How could I live with myself after everything that happened? How could I move on when every relationship I had only reminded me of that night, of the way it all felt, of how it changed everything? The truth is, I'll never be able to forget what happened that night. It's something that will stay with me forever, no matter how much I wish it would fade. But I'm sharing this with you because I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been through something like this? How did you cope with the emotions that followed? Let me know in the comments. Leave a comment and share your story. And if you want to hear more real stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more.